Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Glad to be here.
You sent in this article, and it uses this classic parable, the one with the blind man and the elephant, and
Yeah.
it uses that to talk about the Russia-Ukraine war.
Yeah.
And it really got me thinking about, like, how we approach, trying to understand these really complex events.
It's such a good analogy, you know?
It
It
is.
really shows how our own, limited perspectives can lead us to wildly different conclusions about things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, each of those blind men encounters just one part of the elephant,
Right.
and they think that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's a snake, or it's a tree trunk, or it's a wall.
Yeah.
They're all kind of right in a way,
Mm-hmm.
but they're all missing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And the article suggests that's kind of what we do with the Russia-Ukraine war.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we grab onto one piece of it, and we miss the whole picture.
Absolutely. And the article calls these singular focus points unit theories.
Unit theories.
Yeah. Basically explanations that focus on one specific part of the conflict but don't give us the whole story.
Okay, so like the blind men, they're all feeling different parts of the elephant. These unit theories are giving us these like different pieces of the puzzle.
Right.
And the article talks about 5 of them, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got leadership theory, which really zooms in on Putin's personality
Mm-hmm.
and his decisions as kind of the main force behind this whole war.
Yeah.
It's like saying if Putin was a different person, this war may not have even happened.
So it's putting a lot of weight on Putin's individual choices as the defining factor.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about the other series?
So then we have incentive theory, and this one argues that Putin is driven by personal gain.
Okay.
So maybe it's power, maybe it's securing his legacy, something else entirely, but
Right.
it's all about trying to understand his motivations.
So still focusing on Putin, but now we're looking at what he might stand to gain personally. Okay, so are there any theories that kind of take a wider view?
Yeah, so resource theory shifts the focus away from Putin, the individual,
Okay.
and instead looks at Russia's needs and ambitions more broadly.
Okay.
So this theory suggests that Russia is acting to secure resources,
Mm-hmm.
things like land, natural gas, strategic positioning to try to become like a global superpower.
Got it. So the focus is more on like the needs of the state
Right.
rather than the desires of one person.
Exactly.
Okay. And what about those other two? You mentioned agency theory, and then there was one that was a mouthful.
Yeah, transaction cost economics.
Yeah, that's the one.
But basically, agency theory dives into that potential gap between Putin's goals
Okay.
and what might actually be in the best interest of the Russian people.
Okay.
So it's asking, are Putin's ambitions really aligned with what's best for the entire country?
That's an interesting question to consider, for sure.
Yeah.
And then transaction cost economics, what is that all about?
So it's a bit of a mouthful, but essentially it boils down to this idea that Russia's decision to invade might have been influenced by how expensive and difficult it was to interact with NATO and the West.
Okay, so they're looking at it as like a response to the cost of engaging with Western powers.
Right.
It's like we're getting all these different spotlights shining on, different parts of the stage,
Yeah,
but none of them are giving us a view of the whole production.
exactly. And that's where this idea of programmatic theory comes into play.
Okay.
The article argues we need to move beyond just these individual spotlights and use more of a floodlight to see the whole picture.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to have to dig into this idea of programmatic theory more when we come back.
It's all about kind of weaving together these different unit theories to try to get like a more complete understanding of what's going on.
Okay, so it's like connecting the dots between those different perspectives.
Yeah.
Almost like, weaving a tapestry.
Yeah. That's a great analogy.
You've got all these different threads,
Right.
and each one is like one of those unit theories.
Right.
And when you put them together, you get a richer, more detailed picture
Yeah, exactly.
than any one thread could give you on its own. But
Yeah.
but how do you make sure that tapestry doesn't get all tangled?
Right.
If we're not careful,
Yeah.
it could just become a jumble of like conflicting ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where these ideas of coherence and boundaries come in.
Okay.
So coherence means that all the different unit theories that we're kind of trying to blend together,
Mm-hmm.
they need to have clear relationships with each other.
Okay.
They shouldn't contradict each other.
Right.
And ideally, they should kind of complement and build on each other.
So coherence is like making sure that the tapestry has a pattern.
Right.
It's not just like random threads all over the place.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So what about boundaries? Why are those important?
So boundaries are all about defining the scope of each unit theory,
Okay.
understanding where one theory's explanation kind of ends and where another one begins. It's like, recognizing that different threads are good for different parts of the tapestry.
Right. So you're not trying to make one thread do all the work.
Exactly.
You're using each one strategically to create a more intricate and accurate picture overall.
Right. It's not about forcing all these theories into one mold. It's more about understanding their strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
And using them in a way that, really maximizes their explanatory power.
This is all sounding very theoretical to me.
Yeah.
How do we actually put this programmatic approach into practice?
Yeah.
How do we test if this, bigger integrated theory actually holds up?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And the article really emphasizes the importance of using both multi-method and multi-level approaches in our research.
Okay, so let's break those down. What exactly does a multi-method approach look like?
So a multi-method approach just means using both qualitative and quantitative research methods.
Okay.
So, it's like using different tools to examine that tapestry we were talking about.
No.
So qualitative methods, those are things like in-depth interviews or historical analysis.
Okay.
And they give us these really rich insights into people's motivations, their perceptions, historical context. And then quantitative methods, those are things like statistical analysis of data.
Right.
And they help us identify patterns and correlations that we might not see otherwise.
So qualitative methods help us understand the why.
Right.
And quantitative methods help us understand the what.
Exactly.
But wouldn't we still be missing something if we only focused on one level of analysis?
You're absolutely right.
If we just zoomed in on one part of the tapestry and ignored the rest.
Yeah, and that's where that multi-level approach comes in.
Okay.
It basically recognizes that events happen at different levels.
Right.
We've got the individual level, organizational level, national level, global level.
Right.
And all these levels interact with and influence each other.
Okay, can you give me a specific example of how these different levels might play out in the Russia-Ukraine war?
Sure. So let's say we're looking at the impact of sanctions on Russia.
Okay.
On an individual level, we might study how those sanctions are affecting the daily lives of regular Russian citizens.
Got it.
But on an organizational level, we might look at how those sanctions are impacting specific businesses or industries.
Yeah.
On a national level, we'd analyze how they're affecting Russia's overall economy and their political stability. And then zooming out to the global level,
Right.
we might study how those sanctions are influencing global relations and the overall geopolitical landscape.
So it's we're zooming in and out on the tapestry.
Exactly.
And each level gives us a different perspective on the same issue.
Right. And when we combine all those perspectives, we get a much more nuanced understanding of how complex the situation really is.
Makes sense. So all of this is making me wonder, what are some of the blind spots we might have right now in how we understand the Russia-Ukraine war or even other conflicts if we're not using this kind of multi-level, multi-method programmatic approach?
That's a great question. And I think if we're only looking at the conflict through one lens, whether that's just one specific unit theory
Right.
or one research method or just one level of analysis,
Right.
we're very likely to miss important pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, you might miss key motivations.
Exactly.
Or important patterns or, just misinterpret the meaning of certain events.
Right.
And this programmatic approach seems especially important now, given how much information and misinformation is out there about the war.
It is.
Yeah.
It's more important than ever to have the tools and frameworks to really think critically about complex situations and to arrive at more informed conclusions.
This has given me so much to think about. It's almost like a call to action,
Yeah.
to be more critical and comprehensive in how we approach these really complicated issues.
I agree.
But I think we need to take a break here. And we'll come back and we'll wrap up our deep dive into programmatic theory. All right, we're back. And, I got to say, this whole idea of programmatic theory has really got me thinking.
Yeah, it's a really powerful framework
It is.
for making sense of things. It really pushes us to think outside our normal boxes and really embrace complexity.
Totally. So if you had to boil it all down, if you had to pick one key takeaway for our listener, what would it be?
That's a tough one. I'd say when you're facing any kind of complicated issue, whether it's, a big global conflict or even just a personal dilemma, don't settle for one explanation. Don't just latch on to the first thing that sounds good to you,
Yeah.
Instead, look for connections between different viewpoints. Consider the different levels at play. And this is the big one. Be really aware of your own biases. We all have them,
Yeah, so it's Remembering that our first understanding might be like one of those blind men,
Yeah.
just feeling one part of the
Mm.
elephant. We got to look for those other perspectives and kind of try to weave them together.
Exactly. And this approach isn't just for academics or, people in government.
Right.
It's something anyone can use
Yeah.
to make sense of the world.
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to understand a news story, make a decision at work, deal with a personal challenge,
Mm-hmm.
this this way of thinking can really help you see the bigger picture and avoid those blind spots.
It's almost like a superpower, you know,
It
is
is.
this ability to connect those different threads and get a deeper understanding.
Absolutely. It's about empowering ourselves to be more informed,
Mm.
to be more critical thinkers,
Right.
and ultimately to be more effective in navigating this crazy complex world.
Well said. Well, this has been a really thought-provoking deep dive, I got to say.
It has.
A huge thank you to you for sharing your expertise on all this.
Glad to be here.
And to you, our listener, thank you so much for sending in that article. You really sparked a fascinating conversation.
Hmm.
We hope this deep dive is giving you some new tools for understanding the world.
I hope so.
Tools that help you embrace complexity and seek out those different perspectives.
Yeah.
So until next time, happy exploring.